I'm Toby Thaler. I'm asking a question on panel for the Seattle Neighborhood Coalition, whose longtime history is grounded in fighting displacement and gentrification in the Central District 50 years ago or more. Successful urban planning helps target where jobs and housing development occurs while ensuring necessary transportation infrastructure and public amenities to support these concurrents under GMA.
Excuse me, I'm not really focusing on your question right now. There's a bunch of stuff going on here. Mr. Zimmerman is being a disruptive jerk.
And I greatly appreciate
if you
your
would
calling him out that way, because he is like...
Would you please respect this community and their process?
Yeah, you're trying to neutralize me, I know this trick. Don't worry, I'm political for all matters.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, I'll try and refocus.
I completely understand. So, successful urban planning helps target where jobs and housing development occurs while ensuring necessary transportation, infrastructure, and public amenities, like concurrence under GMA. In the past, the strategy we've been using in the past to implement that is called Urban Village Strategy. Seattle has seen explosive job growth fueled by tax and other incentives provided by the city. Rather than managing growth, we are encouraging unfettered demand on housing and infrastructure and have arguably failed at implementing the concurrency policies because we're just not doing it very well. Planning Director Sam Asefa has called Mayor Murray the planner-in-chief. The planning has largely been based on the backroom deal to upzone a good part of the city to generate, called the Grand Bargain, to generate a little bit of money for public housing and to support transit infrastructure, mass transit, very expensive, way off in the future. Question, what would you do differently as planner-in-chief, speaking to the planning issue, to address the growing needs?
So, I think it's arrogant for the mayor to consider him or herself as the most qualified person in every area that the city has jurisdiction of trying to deal with. So I think that the key to successful leadership is surrounding yourself with the best people possible. So that being said, I would not be so presumptuous as to say, I'm the one with all the answers, and I'm going to impose those. In fact, that's exactly what I'm trying to change, is that the people need to have a bigger say in how they want to accept this density. So that being said, the urban village concept, you know, with transit-oriented development, it does make sense to do that. But that process, I'm not really sure whether the neighborhood councils or the people in the neighborhoods had much say in that entire process in developing, because that's a citywide strategy. It's a major organizing project. But in dealing with the transportation, it makes sense to have people living close to where they work. And the Sound Transit program we have now, okay, what's the Kent Valley, for instance, provides almost 20% of the gross domestic product of the state of Washington. Yet we don't have that road going down to southeast Kent County or that area. And we're spending $54 billion. So what we're talking about, and especially with the displacement, people are trying to get back to their minimum wage jobs in downtown. And they're the ones who end up having to rely most heavily on transit, yet not being really served because you can't get to where you want to go. So in a reliable fashion. So in transit, so some of the transit folk have accused me of being anti-transit or anti-sound transit. I am not that. You know, I think that it's a wonderful thing. I just think that, wish that, well, let me point one thing out. I voted for a bill that requires elected board members for sound transit, because I don't think that there's any accountability there back to the people that's there. So transit advocates are accusing me of being anti-transit because I want accountability out of that board, even though I voted for Sound Transit 3 and supported it because, and what's interesting is there's another candidate in this race who used to be the executive director of Transportation Choices, And my voting record is identical with hers. She actually sponsored a bill in 2015 that created elected board members for the Sound Transit Board. Yet she's totally backpedaled off of that. And the transit people are accusing me of being this when my voting record is identical with hers. So that being said, transit needs to be much more smart about how we apply it. To me, that's the real solution to our transportation issue. So there was a study done that I've seen that said the most effective way to free up our streets from the traffic congestion is to provide free transit. And free transit would cost us over 20 years $4.5 billion. That's the 20-year price tag of it. But the 20-year price tag for Sound Transit Crew is $54 billion. And free transit would move 196,000 people a day. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right.
Whereas Sound Transit, at full build-out, only moves 64,000 people a day. And a lot of those are people who are moving over from the bus, so it's not like clearing the roads. So, we have to, I'm sorry,
So as a chief, well, I want to follow up very quickly and harken back to your response. To a previous question about flattening the bureaucracy. This is more complex. This is a multiplicity of entities. Sound Transit Board, as the chief executive of one of the jurisdictions, how would you work with the others to achieve what you're speaking about?
So the 11th district is basically a suburban district. I just happen to live in a part of it which happens to be in Seattle. But I have a very good working relationship with the suburban cities as a result of that. So I think that we have to deal with transportation as a regional problem because of the displacement that's happening. And so